Hello, folks. My name is Mark. I hope you're having a good day. So, in this episode, I'd like to talk about training and specifically provide you 5 simple and, in my opinion, effective steps that you can implement if you are a individual, a employee, a team leader, team manager, manage a company or own a company or whatever the case may be, to put a fairly simple, in my opinion, training plan together. I've always felt that having a good and effective training plan is essential for any company, a business, or a team if you're a manager of a team, if you want to be effective. One of the most frustrating things for an employee is if they're not trained well to do the job that they're asked to do. Before I dive into that, let me give you an example of something my son and I actually encountered just a few days ago. I went off to him and to a town nearby where I live, and he wanted to buy a new car, and he asked me to go with him, which he did. He ended up buying a new vehicle, and that's a different story. But on the way back, we stopped at a fast food restaurant. On the way back, we were a little bit hungry. We stopped to get a bite to eat. So we placed our order, and I walked back to the restroom after we placed our order, and the towels were not available to wash my hands. Okay, so that's okay. It happened before, not the first time, probably won't be the last. Went to get our cups, to get our drinks, went to the ice machine, no ice. So I had to go up to the counter to get my ice. The next thing is I waited around for our food to come out, and never came out. So I asked the cashier after a few minutes, and I said, "Been waiting here for a few minutes. Where's our food?" "Well, it's sitting here on the counter, waiting for you." So 3 things that happened to me that in that instance that was a little bit frustrating and probably will cause me not to go back to that facility. And I was talking to my son while we were eating our less than hot burgers and French fries. Why did that happen? And in my opinion, part of it, yes, is training. But the root cause of that is because they didn't have a process to do that. Then you ask, okay, why didn't they have a process? It's probably, in my opinion, because the leader or manager of that facility, and probably even the managers above this chain facility, did not put a process in place to do those type of steps, to make sure those type of things didn't happen. So at the end of the day, I left that restaurant a little bit frustrated and less than pleased with the experience that I had. And as I said, if you watch the first episode, it doesn't take much for me to be discouraged for not buying something or not being pleased at a restaurant, or in this case, a fast food facility like what I went to a few days ago. I'd like to hear from you in the comments. Does something like this, does that frustrate you as well as it does for me? I'd like to hear your comments, and how do you feel about something like that? At some point, one of my things that I'm going to talk about is I call it the rule of 20, which means if you go to a place, and I'll talk, like I said, more about that in a future episode. I'll probably dedicate a video just on that. But if you go to a place and have a less than positive experience, you're probably going to, number one, not go back there. Number 2, you're probably going to tell other people about the bad experience that you had, and they're going to tell other people, et cetera, et cetera. But if you had a positive experience, it's going to work the other way around. So ideally, if you run a business or whatever the case may be, or even run a team, you want to put a good training plan and a process in place to alleviate situations such as that. So again, let me know in the comments what you think about situations like that. I know in episode 1, I talked about Chick-fil-A. I'm a big fan of Chick-fil-A, and I talked about that a little bit in episode number 1. And I've never encountered, we go there quite a bit. I'm probably their highest tier customer. We get a lot of points from going there, but I've never encountered, or very seldom, I probably should say, a experience like that. They got their act together, and that's probably why they're so successful and they have the number of customers that they have, as I talked about in episode number 1. So let's dive right in. Talk about these 5 different steps that I've used in the past, and it's not that complicated. But as I said, it's, in my opinion, very important to have a good training plan in place. So step number 1 is pretty simple. Step number 1 is to identify the training needs for yourself, or if you manage a team or manage a company, own a company, identify all the training needs that are appropriate for the folks that you're managing, or if you're owning a business, all the folks, employees that you have. And if you look at the screenshot I'll show you in a little bit, I'm going to give you an example of how simple this can work. You could capture it on and I'm going to give you an example of something I used back in my Air Force days here in a little bit. But the first step, again, capture the training needs that are applicable to all the employees that are part of the team that you're managing. Number 2 is, if you're doing this for a team, you want to capture the names of all your team members, number 1. Then the next step would be determine what of those training needs or those training items that you identified, what of those apply to each person on your team. There's going to be some cases that if you have, like I do, maybe 30 or so training needs, there's going to be some of those that are not applicable to some folks, and they would be applicable to other folks. So determine what those training needs are that for each person. So that's step 3. The next step is assess the current proficiency and qualifications for each person that each of those training needs are applicable to. So basically what you want to do is establish where you are and the gaps that may exist for the team members that you have on your team, and determine what are the next steps to get that person, he or she, up to speed to get fully qualified for those training needs. So the next step, prioritize the gaps. If you have a lot of items on the list, you're not going to be able to train all those items to everybody at the same time. You got to have a plan to put that training in place. It could be formal training, it could be mentorship, on the job training, or a combination of all that. It could be self-study training, for example, e-learning, whatever the case may be. But you have to have a plan to get each individual up to speed on those training items, and you'd probably do some type of prioritization. So in the spreadsheet that I'm showing here, this is just an example of how you can do this. And as you can see, it's not that complicated to lay out these 5 steps. So again, identify the training needs for your team. That's step number 1. Then step number 2 is pretty simple. Just write the names of your employees down a axis. In this case, I have the names of the employees up top. Determine what of those training needs apply to each person. Sit down with the person and determine the proficiency and qualifications of that person. Then you work on a plan to get that person up to speed. Now, one thing I also want to say, I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Just because a person went through some type of training, say they went to a class on one of the training needs or topics that you have in your training plan, that does not necessarily mean that that person is qualified to perform that task or that training need on their own. They have to go through some hands-on experience and take the steps necessary before he or she is comfortable and qualified on that. And between you and that person, you make that assessment once they're fully qualified, and you have a process to sign that person off. And again, this is just an example of what I'm showing here, how you can do it in a Excel type of document or whatever. And that doesn't necessarily be in Excel. It could be on a piece of paper or whatever is the simplest way to do that, to do this step. Let me give you an example of how I did this way back when, back in my Air Force days. So back a long time ago, I was stationed at Pope Air Force Base back in, I guess it was the mid 80s. So my first job in management was to manage the midnight shift. In our case, we had a 24-hour operation. We worked on primarily the C-130 aircraft, and we went to the flight line and troubleshoot the issues after the flights landed after their mission of the day or whatever the case may be. If an item was found to be defective, we brought it into the shop and we did troubleshooting. We probably had 20 plus systems that we were responsible for. After a couple of days of monitoring what was happening for that shift, and we had probably, 20, 25 people that were on the shift that I was responsible for. After a few days and observing, I saw that one person would immediately go to a certain workbench to work those items every day. And he or she was really the only person. There was only one or two people that were qualified on each of those systems that we were responsible for. So I sat down with some of the leads and I said, I need you to be mentors, and ultimately we want to train everybody on our shift on everything. So the example I probably used was, say if you were to get transferred to another location, somebody needed to step up and do the job that you're good at. So what we did, we created, back then I don't think Excel even existed. So we got some poster board, and I put all the systems that we were responsible for, like I have in my example here. And I put the names down the other axis, and we simply color coded them in once the folks were at a certain level of qualification, and once they got fully qualified, we simply colored that cell in, and we posted that on the wall. After a certain period of time, it almost turned into a competition to see who had the most systems colored in of the list that we had assigned to us. Like I said, it almost turned into a competition, and it was funny what happened on the other two shifts, the day shift and the swing shift. They saw that and said, we need to implement something like this as well. And finally, the overall manager of our shop there, he saw that, and he asked for my help, and we implemented that same concept throughout the other two shifts as well, and it worked pretty well. So at the end of the day, if you own a business or company or managing a team, if you don't have something like this type of plan in place, put it in place as soon as possible. And again, don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. But you got to have some type of training plan in place. If you want to be effective as a team or even an employee, you got to have some type of plan in place to do this type of thing. If you're an employee and your team that you're on doesn't have this, have something like this, go to your manager, go to the person in charge that you work for, and throw out a concept, throw out an idea of putting something like this in place. Most managers, if they want to go from being a manager to a leader, they're going to be open to ideas, and just have a discussion with your manager and ask to put this type of thing in place. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. I'd be interested to hear also, besides what I asked you all about earlier about the restaurant example I used, I'd be interested to hear from y'all if you're managing a team or owning a company, do you have something like this in place today? If not, is this something that you think would be helpful for the team that you own, the company that you own, team that you manage, etc. So with that said, thank you. If you get a second and you think this is valuable, please subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate any feedback and comments that you may have as well. So I'm going to try to do this as much as possible. in between, I'm still working, so in between my work activities and on the weekends, I'm trying to put out these videos as much as I can. So again, thank you. Have a blessed day.